Coming up, we hear how Nitro is using Microsoft Azure to create secure, scalable signing services around the world. Customer Tech Talks starts now. Thanks for joining us. Now, I'm sure we've all had a situation where we've had to digitally sign a form. That might have been a contract or an electronic waiver. Today, I'm joined by Philippe Marzouk, VP of Platform, and Filip Verreth, VP of Product Management of eSign Solutions at Nitro. They're going to take us through how they're using Microsoft Azure to create digital and identity signing services around the world. Let's take a look.
Nitro delivers a one-of-a-kind productivity platform for all businesses around the globe, going from identification of a person to generating dynamic documents and signing. We are in a high-trust market delivering identification and signature solutions. So that comes with a lot of data residency and trust and security requirements. Microsoft entered in a real partnership with us where we could rely on their help on marketing activities, commercial activities, and help us win deals together in a partnership.
Philippe, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Now, Nitro has taken a really dedicated approach to using platform as a service for your products. Can you maybe step everyone through why you took this approach and what some of the benefits have been?
Yeah. Certainly. We are using Microsoft Azure for almost more than a decade, and initially it was used by a very small team of .NET developers that were developing our e-signature solution. Back then, we had a lack of good internal infrastructure to be able to host and test and deploy our solutions towards our customers. So we have chosen Microsoft Azure for that reason. And after we started using the Microsoft Azure platform, we started also with a kind of assessment, a cost-benefit assessment of our own internal infrastructure versus, and our data centers versus the Microsoft Azure platform. And from then it was, because we already had the experience with the platform, we decided to go fully for Microsoft Azure for both our internal and also our external infrastructure.
So really kind of taking advantage and laying that groundwork with your dev teams first kind of helped lead to moving the entire business over, which is great to hear. Now, no doubt security is a huge factor, and especially when working with things like digital signatures and identities. Can you maybe take us through what some of the features are of Azure that you're taking advantage of to ensure that your customers' data and also that Nitro's data is kept secure?
Yeah. So we make use, for instance, of many of the standard platform services like Azure Key Vault, Azure SQL, Azure App Services that allow us to build secure and compliant solutions. And for encryption for data at rest and in transit are easy configurable and maintained. And that way we are able to implement and guarantee industry best practices towards security.
That's really great to hear. And as you think about the fact that, with Nitro's service offerings being available both in Europe and also now in Australia, how do you approach things like data residency and, especially when you think about certain customers wanting to keep their own data within a country?
Well, we started with our deployments in Azure West Europe with a backup in North Europe for GDPR reason. But then we had some customers who required their data to be hosted in France. So we deployed also in France Central. And planning for further expansion, we started to use infrastructure as code. And that made it easy for us to then continue deploying in Australia and in the US recently. So that's for the data residency. And of course, the way the Azure regions are organized with geo-replication in the same geographical area allows us also to handle the data, the disaster recovery in the same region without compromising for the data residency.
So really great to hear that it's really easy for you to be able to spin up new services in new regions as well, to be able to maintain that data residency for customers who require that. Now, no doubt the idea of compliance is also really important when you're working with digital contracts, especially depending on which industry you're working with, different compliance requirements are put into effect. Can you maybe talk about what some of the controls or certifications are that you take advantage of within Azure? And how does this help your customers build trust with Nitro?
Practically all of the certifications Microsoft provides are helping us to answer all of the security and compliance questions that are coming from our customers. If I need to take out some of the most important certifications Microsoft currently has, is for instance the ISO 27001 certification, 27018, 27701, certainly in Europe, linked to data protection, the HIPAA certification, and certainly also HDS for our French customers. Both are certifications linked to hosting and processing of health data. It becomes basically indispensable for our customers for security and compliance reasons to have this kind of certifications, or as a service provider like Nitro, or the hosting provider like Microsoft Azure, to have this kind of certifications to offer trust services globally.
That's great. And great to hear that those certifications, especially when we think about health data records and being able to have HIPAA compliance available to you as part of the service, it's great to hear that you're being able to take advantage of that and use that to build trust with your customers as well. Now, we've talked about security and compliance and also your reason for moving to Azure, but I'd like to shift gears a little bit and talk about scaling and how it is that Nitro approaches the idea of scaling up your resources to support things like increased load.
We take advantage, well, of course, the architecture of the solution must, on the various components and tiers, allow scaling. But then we really take advantage of the various scaling capabilities offered in Azure, be it scale up, scale out. We also use auto-scaling based on CPU usage or on amount of messages on Azure Service Bus. And what is really interesting with Azure is that you can, with the push of a button, scale without a lengthy capacity planning exercise.
That's awesome. And the fact that you can actually do that without having to, think about purchasing new servers or new hardware to be able to scale up is one of those great benefits of Azure. Now, of course, as you look back over your journey to Azure, what are some of the challenges that you've faced, that you've been dealing with while building your products, and how have you dealt with those?
Well, one of our main challenges was choosing the right resource to run in Azure. I mean, the right solution to use. Azure has a very broad offering, and choosing the right one is one of the main challenges that you face when you want to migrate to Azure, particularly if you want to use platform as a service rather than simply infrastructure as a service. Another difficulty or challenges that you have is that, of course, the various offerings are changing all the time, are evolving, and you need to be nimble to follow those changes and adapt.
And it is, I guess, a strange problem to have, but a good problem to have. It's like walking into a mechanic's workshop and having all these tools available to you and trying to figure out which one to use and which one's the right one for the job. But now, one of the things we like to do on Customer Tech Talks as well is we like to think about the lessons that have been learned along the way. And as you look back over your time with Azure over the number of years that you've been working on the platform, what are some lessons you would share with other businesses out there who are maybe looking to move into Azure or maybe starting to build their solution on Azure, and what's some of the advice you would give them?
One of the key lessons that I would like to stress out is the very interesting content that you have everywhere to accompany you in that journey. You have a lot of trainings, tutorials, conferences, blueprints that are available. And I know that Microsoft helped us a lot, particularly in the beginning, but they accompany us also for a long time to help us in selecting the best option in our based on our workloads and what we needed for our solutions.
So really taking advantage of those training resources that are out there and available before you start your journey to make sure that you've got as much information as possible. It's a really great piece of advice there. And Philip, what about from your perspective? What's some of the lessons you've learned that you would share with others?
Yeah, I think I agree with Philippe. It's making fully use of the developer resources, communities that can certainly help you with everything you need to know to use Azure in the full extent possible. But also reaching out to Microsoft. They are open to help you with any problem that you might face. So I think that's the key lesson. find your way and get help when needed. People will help you.
That's great to hear. Philippe and Philip, thank you so much for taking time with us today. It's been great to hear your story and your journey.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And of course, if you'd like to learn more about any of the technologies you've seen here, you can head over to Microsoft Learn to get started. Microsoft Learn has modules focused on everything from the fundamentals of Azure all the way through to building advanced applications. It'll help you arrive at your goals and at your own pace. And of course, if you want to be featured on an upcoming episode of Customer Tech Talks, you can email us at cttalk@microsoft.com to get started. Once again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next Customer Tech Talks.